Welcome to Perspectives El Paso. I'm Professor Leon Blevins of the Government Department and of EPCC TV. I have a guest with me today who teaches chemistry at the Valle Verde campus of El Paso Community College. Jimmy
Thanks
Vigo.
for having me.
Vigo, V-E-G-O?
Thank you, Professor.
Oh, you spell it V-I-G-O.
V-I-G-O, yes.
And your background is?
My background is in chemistry.
In chemistry, that's your educational background. And your ethnicity, what is that?
I'm original from Puerto Rico.
From Puerto Rico. And
Yes,
Puerto
sir.
Rico is a part of the United States of America.
Yes, sir. Back in 1960s, I believe, when we became a Commonwealth of Puerto Rico.
We're not going to
the
build a
United
wall
States.
between the United States and Puerto Rico.
I hope not. It's going to be very hard to do that.
Okay. Well, we're glad you're teaching at El Paso Community College.
Thank you.
And I'm giving Jimmy a hard time here today. I met him a few weeks ago. Well, I met him last year at a party, and we talked a little bit. And then we met a couple of weeks ago before spring break. Here we are in the latter part of March of 2017. And he told me about his new book. And his publisher, Jenny Glenn, a friend of ours, told me about the book also. And the title is Reckless Speculations and Twisted Thoughts.
Yes, sir.
Now, in my experiences over the years, I've had a lot of twisted thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we may talk about it. Exposing the false conflict between science and religion. On the back cover, and I'm going to read just a short part here, and then we're going to have a conversation. The universe fades into oblivion through cycles of destruction and the rebirth as we move into the future in space and time, the heartbeat of life. The order in atomic theory matches divine order as expressed by ancient religious doctrines. There is no traveling to the past to change past actions. The only solid universe is the one of the present time. Reality hides a higher level of order and processes occurring in the background that go undetected by human perception and instrumental measures. Human beings possess a spiritual energy, and there is a record of human thoughts and past actions. In scientific terms, the universe is made from distorted parts of a superior substance. In religious words, we live inside of God. Now, what do you mean by all of this? This is your work. This is your book.
Yes, sir.
What is this exposing the false conflict between science and religion about?
Well, it's my understanding. I have observed a lot that throughout the ages, the ideas of science have been in conflict with religion. Mm-hmm. And I have observed many times that the people that are really contributing to these ideas are really people that don't have credentials, or they don't have the deep knowledge to make a comparison. So the title of like Reckless Speculations, it means like under normal circumstances, people are not really using sound science, the real fundamental explanations, to come out to conclusions like, things like God doesn't exist and there's nothing to do between science and religion.
Okay, let's go back thousands of years. Would this be a case kind of superstition, reckless thoughts and things that they're coming whole cloth about the nature of the universe and stuff? No science to base it on.
Exactly, correctly. It will be like putting the science together, all these fundamentals, is more like a reckless thought for modern society, because people are not really thinking this way.
Okay, and some people believe that you got bad humors out of your body by bleeding your body.
That's correct.
And that existed up until just a couple of hundred years ago.
Yes, sir.
Is that kind of what you're getting at here?
Well, what I'm trying to do is like put together, as you read, to demonstrate that the order in the atomic theory of how is matter composed, which in reality what scientists really have is an approximate idea, because the universe itself cannot be described 100% through the observations that we humans do. Mm-hmm. And what we call the theory of quantum mechanics, which is like one of the bases of modern physics, together with the theory of relativity. In quantum physics, matter is really observed through a mathematical model that it is an approximation of what we really observe. Mm-hmm. So it's not quite a detailed explanation. I'm saying that the most outstanding theories that we have that we teach to our students in the classrooms are really approximations, and they're not really concrete. And when you go down into breaking down matter into atoms and waves, there are a lot of opinions that some scientists can come into conflict, even to things that we think that we have completely established. They do have some limitations.
Right. They're still theories, and a theory is an explanation of reality.
Correct.
And then to prove what is real, you have to do experimentation,
That's correct.
analysis, competition with other people looking
That's
at
correct.
your research.
That's what I always tell my students, that when you do research, and especially when you go to graduate school and you graduate and you do an actual research for a university, you learn that you have to study your problem from many angles. It's not just one or two. You have to study everything that can contribute to the problem that you're trying to solve. Mm-hmm. So no wonder why many students, spend many years in graduate school, obtaining a PhD, because the work is slow. It needs to be a lot to consider all the different angles. There could be like instrumental techniques. There could be a lot of theory. And not until you have all your angles, your conclusions pointing to the same place, that's the point where you can say with more certainty, about your conclusions. What are you trying to conclude from your observations?
Okay, let's take it though over to the area of faith. I can prove only up to this point about real things that I can see, I can touch, I can hold, I
That's
can
right.
smell, I can manipulate. But then it comes to the idea of a power outside of ourselves, a created power.
That's correct.
Some call that God,
Right.
by whatever terminology. This is what I call a leap of faith.
Right.
I cannot prove to you that God exists. I simply have to believe that he exists or not believe that God exists.
That's correct. Yeah, one of the sentences that I usually express is that science is not really complete. It's, like I said before, it's an approximation. And in modern physics is pointing to a direction in which what we observe with our five senses,
Right.
what we can perceive with our eyes, we can listen to, and we can touch, and we can smell, there is another level that is hidden from our observations. And it started back in the times when Einstein and these other scientists called Rosen and Podolsky, it's called the EPR paradox. It's a paper that got published, I believe it was like in the 60s. I have it cited in my book. And the EPR paradox precisely speaks about the lack of confidence that Einstein and what I call incorporated, they had about the theories that they had at that time of quantum mechanics, that they claimed that this kind of science was incomplete and was not describing exactly everything that humans are observing, that there is a hidden level behind what we observe that our instruments and our fine senses as humans, we cannot detect.
Right. They believed there was a black hole out there somewhere.
So sort of like that, yeah.
Yeah, but they could not prove it, but they had a
Right.
theory that that was true.
That is supposed to be there.
Now with modern astronomy, we can more likely see some of those things out there.
Correctly, yes. And until certain point.
Yes.
And because like as you know, black holes continue to be a line of study in the astrophysical
Right.
sciences, and really no one understands what's behind it. And it's supposed to be sucking matter, but no one knows where it goes and what's happening. So it is actually called technically a point of singularity, in which what happens is that when the mathematics and the physics that we have, the modern mathematics and physics that we have, try to understand what is a black hole, at a certain point, the science collapses. It goes into oblivion, like I say in my book. There is a notion of what is called discontinuity in nature. Actually, the atom itself, it's theoretically in atomic theory, in which you have in the nucleus in the center, you have the protons, which is the massive part of the atoms, and what is called in orbits, and I use quotation marks, because there's a lot of controversy when scientists talk about particles going in orbits around others. Because usually it was compared at the beginning from the Niels Bohr theories back in the 60s and the 50s, the original scientific theories, that it looks like the planetary system, like the Earth rotating around the sun, so is the electrons rotating around the nucleus of the atom. However, the electrons are not really point particles like balls, like say the Earth, Mars, and the other planets. Rather, the electrons are more like clouds of energy, like an energy distribution. So it is really described in terms of statistics. So how is the energy of electron distributed as a cloud of energy around the center of the atom? So it's not exactly the same orbital system as the Earth and the planetary system, in the sense that it's not really, the particles are no longer solid balls. They're more clouds of energy
Well, we have
distribution.
an analogy to that even with the weather, and we can relate that over to religion.
That's correct.
We have the wind, very, very powerful. They're predicting some 50-mile-an-hour winds over the next few days here in El Paso. We see some of those. We can't see the wind, but we feel it.
That's right.
We know that power.
That's right.
And in the spiritual realm, and most of our spiritual background in this country come from Christianity, and we hear about the body, soul, and the spirit.
That's correct.
We see the body, we believe there's a soul, and we believe that there's that spirit that moves within this frame of religious reference.
Correct.
Okay. So do you ever have students that ask you about this? Can you be a scientist and believe in God?
That's right. And in the book, I'm trying to convince the scientific community that what we call the principle of duality in matter, which is a principle that says that basically, just to keep it pretty much simple, is science is pretty complex, and it requires, I would believe, a level of understanding and getting the proper words to transmit it to non-scientists.
Well, that's the reason we talk about simple faith.
That's right.
You have to bring it down to a simple
So
understanding.
basically, all matter, which is called atoms, we are all made of atoms, and atoms are broken down into subparticles called the proton, the electron, and the neutrons. Well, it happens that they are basically made from two different kinds of energy. One that makes a being solid, like for us, it would be when you put all our atoms together, all that matter kind of energy that makes us solid, that gives us our solid body. However, just like light, this got discovered with the initial experiments with light to try to understand what was light. There is another contributor to the entity called the particle, right? Which is another kind of energy that is more like a wave. So everything that is making us has two forms of energy, one that makes us solid and one that makes us like a wave. So in essence, if you sum all the particles of our bodies, you can separate what is the solid body on one side, which is the energy making it solid. But we also must have an energy that is like a wave, which in my book, in this philosophy, I'm equating with the spirit that humans have, trying to convince the scientific community that the concept of duality is suggesting to us that we do have another form of body different from the solid part.
Well, yeah, I read the parts of your book I could understand. I didn't understand the sections with the chemical formulas and things of that nature. Over many, many years, I've told my students, we grow up with the expectation of regularity. You deal with a lot of this, regularity, systems and movements and waves and patterns.
Because the universe is like an equilibrium. It's like this is like an I call it an equilibrated bubble of electromagnetism.
Okay, but then something can happen. Mutation
can change, yes.
Yes, we have the expectation of reality.
Right.
We have what you just mentioned, but sometimes something happens that mutates it and makes it go awry.
That's
Cancer,
correct.
for example.
That's correct. That's a good example, right?
Okay.
Like a cancer cell. Like a cell is normal, and for some reason it turns into a cancer cell.
Right.
Everything in this universe can change. If the set of conditions, initial set of conditions, if they're changed, usually in biology, the way that this is expressed is that whenever an entity feels like stressed from the outside, it changes to a new form so it can cope with the stress from the outside. And that's actually how viruses, bacteria, for example, especially viruses, we all know that these viruses that we are exposed to every year, the flu,
Right, yeah.
they have mutations. And as far as I understand, and every year is a different mutation, and scientists have to go back to the labs and then restudy and find a vaccine that is more appropriate to adjust to the change
Right.
that these entities, viruses, bacteria are doing.
I think that's fascinating.
It is. It is a concept of life, and it reminds me about when you read the sentence that I have, that in scientific terms, like we live inside of God, because I'm saying that the universe is alive, that the whole universe is an organism. It reminds me to explain that, for example, if you take a space rocket and you go way far in the planetary system, say to another galaxy, and you may find life over there, but does it have to look like you and I with two legs and two arms?
No.
Why necessarily have to be like that?
Could be a blob.
Exactly. You may find life in another planet, and you may not even recognize it because you don't understand that other life form. So we, in the same line, we can conclude, or we can say, give it the benefit of the doubt, that the whole universe is a different kind of organism than you and I. And just like bacteria live in our guts, we live in the guts of a bigger organism, call it the universe.
It's a living universe.
Exactly.
Before our time runs out, I want to deal with one that's a big controversy and has been a long time in our country, is the issue of evolution. And students sometimes will ask me in class, Mr. Blevins, do you believe in evolution? I say, yes, I do. I don't look the same today I did 30 years ago.
That's right.
Right here, I can tell you. I've evolved. And they get a laugh out of that. But yeah, I believe, and I can be a Christian evolutionist. I can believe that God uses any way He wants to create life and to shape life and reshape life. And it doesn't destroy my faith.
That's true.
To believe in that.
You remind me to explain that, in my opinion, and I have talked to other scientists about this kind of approach to reinterpret fundamentals, because the theory of evolution normally is presented that we come from the apes or the chimps,
yeah, I don't like
the
that.
monkeys. Well, in this other way that I'm presenting in my book, life is more written in instructions. There are sets of instructions. Like, for example, our genes to make human beings is a set of instructions which is independent from the set of instructions of a monkey or a dog or a cat. They all have their own set of instructions.
We have instructions right there.
Exactly. But they're unique to you. So it doesn't mean that for me to generate your instructions, I have to generate it from a species that is, say, below you.
Exactly.
What we're proposing here is that there is a set of, like a cosmic instruction in which everything is written there: how to make humans, how to make cats, how to make dogs, how to make monkeys, how to make different matter, how to make rocks. Basically, everything is written in some kind of electromagnetic, very fundamental instructions. And what happened is that this is an ether theory. So there is a substance that where you plug in those instructions, and the substance becomes the universe, and with all its living organisms. So I have the hunch or the idea sometimes that observing evolution, like coming from the monkeys one from another one as time is passing, it's more like a linear way of observing things. Mm-hmm. However, in science, especially in chemistry, what I have observed is that when we study chemical reactions and the behavior of systems, not everything is a linear fashion. There are things that are more exponential, which is just to name another way. Exponential growth of bacteria, or polynomial way of explaining a reproduction. And so observing, in my opinion, observing evolution through coming from the monkeys, it's more like a linear way, but we have not considered other ways, like what if it's an exponential way? What if it's a polynomial way? Which certainly we change the interactions. It is not certainly has to be like one comes from another one, from one before. It's like you can probably make different living organisms by just having the instructions and plugging those instructions in this soup of substance that provides the material, and everything is built independent from each other.
Good. I reached for the book before we leave. I want to give you a chance to list the telephone number
Yes, sir.
or a website if people are interested in this. It's fascinating to talk about this, and those that are really geared into science, you want to see this book and get it. So tell us a telephone number.
You can reach me. I have this address that I posted in the book. It's like the P.O. Box 13150 in El Paso, Texas, 79913.
Okay.
You can put my name there, Jimmy Vigo, and send there your comments. I do have a way through my publisher to reach the book. The book has in the first chapters a lot of fundamental science that has to be explained for the people to understand how is it that I do a connection between the order in the atomic theory and the order in the divine, and that they look exactly the same thing, order that was described thousands of years ago.
Okay, Book Publishers of El Paso is listed in the telephone directory if they want to check that and give a call.
Yes.
Okay, any other things that I need to know that I didn't know before?
Well, I think that, like yourself, I have received some input from students and some other people that have helped me out to put this book together, some of the information, especially the one on the Kabbalah religion, how is like the hierarchy of different universes, and how that is actually organized in the book, put in face to face with the atomic theory. So I think that one thing you should know is that get ready when you read this book to dedicate time, because the first chapters, like you said, they do have a bunch of fundamental science that needs to be understood before you get to see how is it that the connection is made, and it's very explicit connection.
Let's raise an issue about we as chemical animals. We're chemicals.
Yes, sir.
We're composed of chemicals.
Yes, we are the whole universe.
We search for chemicals. We want to smoke cigarettes. We want to smoke marijuana. We want to do things to put in our brains to feel good.
That's right.
Why is this?
Well, that is a very good question.
Okay, give me a good answer.
And I think that we're going to have to go a little bit into the field of psychology, why people like to feel good. Why is it that people go after drugs to have an artificial happiness?
Oh, okay.
And certainly there are a lot of explanations today of how these drugs work in our brain. And precisely one of the more interesting ones is the methamphetamines, which is very popular, on heroin with the opioid receptors. And the intervention in the central nervous system, it alters the interaction between neurons, what is called the synapses, which is the space between, in establishing neuron-to-neuron communication. So there are chemicals that get upregulated or deregulated, and that is associated with the feelings of like euphoria and extreme happiness. So yeah, we are chemicals ourselves, and we are looking for chemicals. So that reminds me to say that that is an evidence that we are all made of waves. Atoms at the bottom line are waves. If you open a book on quantum mechanics, you better know some mathematics, like a little higher than calculus, to understand that the basic motion of the pendulum, like a grandfather clock, is a sine wave, and those are the same mathematics that is used to explain atoms as vibrations.
Well, every person watching this program have seen television programs talking about brain waves and seeing the machinery in the operating room or in the ER or whatever it is they're located at, and flatlining.
That's
we
right.
actually use that term.
Yes.
Brain waves.
Yes, that reminds me to say that we are all made of waves, and therefore, based on quantum terms, you can only generate waves. So your thoughts and your actions can also be associated with a wave. So you and I talking about this stuff right now are generating a particular wave, vibration, that has to do with this kind of conversation.
Do you think that's why when we're staying at some place, and I can recall places where this happened with me and my wife, is by the beach. We stopped one time in the middle of the night at a motel, and we woke up to the sound of waves.
Correct.
And it was so restful.
It's a natural sound.
A natural sound of the waves that fit our brains.
Right.
And we still have that, and that was way back 40 years ago.
That's right, but don't go too far. Did you remember when people say that in full moon days, some people can go crazy.
Oh, yes. Reckless speculations
There
and
you
twisted
go.
thoughts.
I guess I wrote the book under the full moon.
But I've never turned into a werewolf, but sometimes I've thought about it.
but yes, it does have some kind of reality to think that an object like the moon and its force of gravity, that it changes the waves on the ocean, it changes the wind. It can also generate some kind of waves that alters the mind of people. It is actually seriously considered today in actual psychiatry and psychology.
So we moved over from chemistry to physics
psychology.
to psychology.
Exactly.
It's all tied together.
But again, because everything is made of waves, so you shouldn't be surprised that everything behaves kind of the same. It doesn't matter if you're talking about subatomic particles or atoms or molecules or entire cells or tissues or organs and an entire human being or even society, because at the bottom line, at the fundamental, everything is made of atoms, and atoms are vibrations. So you should not be surprised that you can find society behaving the same way that atoms do.
Well, that's why sometimes people say of someone else, that person is a vibrant person.
That's correct. and the person is receiving the vibration of that person, because like I said, every thought and every action of human beings boil down to a vibration. And I remember you reading the part that it says that there is a record of all human actions. It's well explained in a chapter in the book. The Hindi people call it the Akasha record. And the string theory of physics, which is a theory that is not 100% accepted, but it's a mainstream theory of today in universities. It calls it the zero energy field, which is a place that is supposed to be some kind of energy in which every human action and thought is being stored. And that, to me, is more like what is the meaning of the past. The past is a wrinkle in time of what you and I did. It's a record of it.
Well, we have a past now. Our time is running out here.
Unfortunately.
Glad to have you on the show
Thanks for
today.
having me.
Jimmy, you've enlightened a lot of us, and we may have to watch this back on replay so we can hear some of this and think about it a little deeper, because this was a highly philosophical kind of conversation about science. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, and thank you for watching this program, Perspectives El Paso. Tune in again. We may have another scientist on before long. I'm Leon Blevins.